example, one of our gCADPlus users has brought in a drawing from the AutoCAD environment and wants to use it as a backdrop for putting a landscape plan onto it to save a great deal of measurement time. What I want to illustrate here is that a drawing that comes from an architect who's using AutoCAD has a lot of features in it which can be tricky to manage. For the sake of argument, let's take text. Although we encourage you to use where text says, for example, lawn, we would expect that, or we'd expect you to use the draw text, single line text for that. Pretty obviously it's a single line of text, but this drafter in the AutoCAD environment has used mtext or multi-line text for everything. Not only has he done that, but if we look at a larger slab of text such as this one here, let me just pop the view to background color white, and here's a block of mtext. Look at the contents of that text. If we click in here and try looking at the contents rather, notice that it starts with a curly bracket, then a \F Arial B0 I0 and so on, and scattered through the text are \P and \L. These are all control codes that AutoCAD uses to format text in the AutoCAD environment, and it creates all sorts of difficulty for us if we remove all those fancy control codes there. I won't bother with the ones at the bottom here, but we can do just that, and there's text now that reverts to our standard text. We can of course change the text style. If we click in here, there's only the one style, so the styles that we use to change text from one to the other were not used in the AutoCAD environment. Instead of having a name style like Arial, they put all of those control codes in each and every piece of text, and that certainly creates a great deal of difficulty. So be aware of potential problems with text. If we move over here to one that says Northern Property Title Boundary, there's even more complex text in this one. It starts with a \PXQR, then a colon, and then the curly brackets then start. So let's remove all of that. Then there's another burst of this PQ star. It's really cryptic and really quite difficult for us to cope with. You can leave as is, but you do be aware that a lot of interesting, to coin a word, QR and so on is in that text, so it can be difficult. What I'm going to recommend is that you put everything in this drawing on a single layer, move everything to a single layer, and then have another layer and just probably retype some of that text. You may not need all of it. A lot of it's to do with architectural planning rather than landscape planning. So text can be tricky. Another thing I notice is when I pick this block here, which is referred to as title 50, notice that it's got some codes with it. It's got some AutoCAD attributes, C.AD name and so on. That's a blank attribute. Then there's a number ID 11, a D2 and a D1. Attributes are what AutoCAD uses as replaceable holders to hold text. We would prefer to keep things much simpler than that, so I'd be inclined to explode that block, and now when I pick it, the attributes down here have gone. We do use attributes, as you know, when we're putting in plants, because we want the botanical name and common name to be associated with plants. Here's another issue. You may notice here, if I select the red line there and look in our property block, that's a rotated dimension in a style with a rather unusual name, dim-100 $0. Now if we go to dimensions and dimension styles and list, you can see that there's our standard gCADPlus dimension style, and here's the dim style that was used. And if we pick text here, you can see that the text height is 2.5, so that's why we can't see it. If we change that to say 150, so I'm altering the style. I don't particularly like red colour, I'd rather handle the colour by layer. And we have a look in here at geometry, the arrow head size should be, I suspect, something like 100, and we certainly don't want it to be coloured red. And the extension lines can also be by layer, and we OK that. Now I think you'd argue that I've got my arrowhead height far too high, so let's go back to dimension style, and we'll make sure we're editing this one, and geometry maybe 20 for the height of the arrowhead, and it's better. And as we come in here, we can see that's 10.800 meters long, that dimension. I'd question the need of having those dimensions. I'd probably rub out those dimensions, because at any time, remembering we're going to use this as a base drawing, at any time we want to use it, we can simply use the measure tool and measure from one point to another. The point 0 there reflects, if we go again into dimension styles and go to units here, it's using a comma as a separator. We'd want to change that to a period. And precision, you certainly don't need 2 decimal places there, and we can OK it. And probably need to redimension it to get rid of that 0, but I do digress a little. So I'd be inclined to eliminate dimensions such as that one, and eliminate dimensions such as this one. That one says 1200, there's no override there, so let's erase it. Let's just check one or two of the other dimensions. Here's one here, the length of the property is 45740, and there's a text override in there. Can you see that? The override is 45720. So someone's put a dimension in but then overridden it, and that is, for most drafting people, is strictly a no-no. What you try and do is dimension that line there, so unselect all. How long is that line? It's 740, and the dimension should have been exactly the same. Its measurement is 740, and someone has overridden it with 45720. So I would question the diligence, if you like, of the AutoCAD drafter here. There are some problems. It's only a 20 millimeters out, but even so, we like in the gCADPlus environment to keep everything precise. So the best way, I think, to handle this whole drawing is to get hold of every entity, move it onto a layer. I'm looking for one layer that's already there. I'll put it to hidden 2, although that's not such a good idea. That might have some line types associated with it. Let's look here. No, there's a layer called hidden 2, but it's got the default line type associated with it. That's potentially a problem. While we're at it, let's put that back to there, and a layer called hidden 2, we'll call this base plan. So what I'm suggesting we do is go back here, select all, and change to a layer called base plan. These entities here, I think we should do colour by layer. Not quite sure why. There we are, we're back to everything black and white now. So everything's on one layer, and what that means is that we can now bring that, when we're doing a brand new drawing, we can bring it in and pop it on this layer and then lock that layer. Let me demonstrate. It's called NS base plan, so if I was going to do a new drawing, I'd say no template here, I would bring that drawing in. I don't know how I closed it. Let's close it first. I would say File, Insert. It's an LCD file, so I'll bring it in. There it is, base plan. I bring it in. It's now sitting in there, and everything should be on a layer called base plan. Let's just double check it by turning, there's one called projection which I'm not sure of, but for the moment let's turn off base plan and everything should disappear, and it does. So let's go back to our layer and turn all layers on, all use layers on, and close, and then get back to our base plan layer. And what we're going to do, we want to lock it, so it's still got that. Now we're right with a continuous there, and here's our lock. So we lock it. Now as we bring in symbols, let's imagine that this is a lawned area here. Let's imagine that there's a tree in it. Can you see I can pick that one that's on a layer called projection. So in a moment we'll remove that projection layer. Let's just turn it off for the moment. That should take away. Looks as though it's a contour line. That's better. This area is going to be a lawn. Let's imagine that we want to put a tree in the lawn. So we'll just pick some sort of, scroll down through here, put some fairly large and pretty obvious tree. That one will do. We'll say open and insert it into the drawing, and in goes the tree. Remember, all symbols come in with a canopy diameter of 1, and it's on layer 0, so I can scale that symbol quite happily, like so. In the lawned area, let me change again back to a background layer. So there's the tree in the lawn, and remember that since the background layer is locked, see, I can't inadvertently move things. It's just sitting there as a backdrop, but of course I can move the elements that I'm adding to the drawing. So I think follow that approach when you are trying to use AutoCAD drawings as base plans.